One of the things that we often think of when it comes to the rowing machine are the high intensity, full body parts of the workout that makes this machine so loved world over. But what we often don't think about is the way that we can take care of our bodies to complement the training that we're doing on the machine. With that being said, stick with me today if you want to find out the best ways to use a foam roller to help you take care of your body so that you can be acting as your own masseuse. If you can learn to take care of your body, you can actually learn to save yourself a ton of time, money, and effort in the things that can happen when you're not addressing the important mobility factors, mobility being your body's ability to articulate joints through ranges of motion, not just flexibility. If you're taking care of these, it means that you're going to be able to avoid having to go get massages regularly. You're going to be able to avoid the injuries in the first place that may be setting you back. So taking the time to think about tools that can help with mobility and knowing the ways and taking the time to actually address any little aches and pains you might have in your body is going to be super valuable for you. And so today we're going to take out a foam roller and I'm going to run you through some very easy and common areas that you can hit with that foam roller so that you are doing the best job that you can to take care of your body. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm Shane Farmer and this is Dark Horse, where you build the life that you want to live, and we just happen to use rowing, and in this case mobility, to help you get there. So mobility is one of these things that if you can take a strong look at it, and if you can say, you know what, fitness, I believe in fitness, I think it's good for me, I think it's good for my body to be able to move and do different things and play in different ways, right? And that's why we choose rowing. Well, then it's pretty easy and it's a pretty logical jump to say, and while I'm doing those things, then my body actually needs to take a little bit of time to take care of itself when I do have these big efforts, right? Like, for example, right now, my butt is very sore because I did some heavy lunges the other day. That probably means that that area was pretty taxed and I should give it a little bit of love, which means that in today, as I'm walking you through how to use the foam roller, you're gonna maybe hear some noises out of me that are usually only reserved for when I am here doing this on my own because of how sore my glutes are right now. But I digress. Let's talk foam rollers. Number one, there are a litany of foam rollers that you can pick from. This is the TP Therapy foam roller. This has been around forever. In my opinion, this is one of the better foam rollers out there. It's got a nice firm plastic inside. It has a thin layer of foam around the outside, as well as all of these little knobs and doolies around here. Now, are these critical? Absolutely not. Is this slightly on the more expensive side? 100%. And I actually have this linked in the description below. I've used TP Therapy forever, which is why I have one, but I also have just a cheap blue foam roller that I found off Amazon, but you can go find them very cheaply. I think I might have a link to those in the description below as well. All that matters is that you have some surface and that you can decide on the firm to softness scale is appropriate for you. If you're getting started, having something that's a little bit squishier is probably gonna be a bit more comfortable because that squish is super helpful when you start hitting tender areas of the body. But as you get more comfortable with it, you may start to desire a heavier foam roller. Typically, think of it this way. If you get into a massage and you like heavy pressure from the masseuse, stick with something that's a bit more rigid or has a plastic insert in the inside, or it's more of a rigid foam. If you like the masseuse to go easy on you, well, then you can probably stick to something that's on the softer side and you'll be happier with whatever foam roller that you choose. From there, a foam roller can almost hit anywhere in your body, and that's kind of the beauty of it. It's just such a simple tool that can be used anywhere. And so I just want to cover what are those things that you could be doing for your body that are going to be rowing specific for the training that we're doing on the rowing machine. And in this, I'm going to focus pretty heavily on the areas of the legs, hips, and back. Kind of the biggest taxed areas that we can go to. Now, can we hit other areas? 100%, but for now, let's stick with what this can do for our lower body and our midline, okay? Starting off, something that very few of us think about is what our calves are doing while we row. Now, why is this important? Well, because the calf can actually be or the Achilles can be very restricting into the catch position. And if you feel, in one of our recent videos, we've talked about getting into the perfect catch position and not allowing the heels to lift. If you find that your heels do want to lift or you have very tight ankles, and getting into a good catch position with that foot in dorsiflexion is hard for you, then this can actually be a good way to help alleviate some of that. The way that we start is you're going to take that foam roller you're going to put it under your calf. From here, I like to take my other leg and place it over the top. Why? Because it makes it more intense and it adds a little bit of something to it. Now, you don't have to do this. You could have this leg on the ground if you want it. But from here, what I'm going to do is prop my body up on my arms now. Now, this is already decently intense. I'm in the middle of my calf. Okay, and what I'm gonna start by doing is I want my toe pointing straight up and down, 90 degrees up and down. From here, I am going to rotate in outward toe circles or foot circles 10 times. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I'm gonna go the opposite direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You can take yours at a more calm pace if you like. And then the last piece is I'm gonna pull my toe as close to my face as I can. So I'm dorsiflexing my toes towards my face, and then I'm gonna throw my foot like I'm pointing at something with my toes. 1, 2, and you're gonna do that 10 times. I'm gonna save you from sitting here while I do it all. Let's do 5 times. Okay, so that's 5 times. It's pretty intense when you do that. And the reason being is that it creates a natural inhibition of the calf. When I have to flex my toe downward, that calf actually has to dissociate for a moment to allow my toe to point. And so in that moment of dissociation, it shuts off, which allows the foam roller to go in deeper to the tissue. It's pretty brilliant. Now from there, what I'm going to do is I'm then going to rotate my toes out 45 degrees. Okay, and from here I'm gonna do that same process. 10 out, 10 in, 10 pulling of the toes and flicking away. And you can probably guess what's next. I'm gonna rotate in at 45 degrees and do the same thing. Now what'll start to happen is you'll notice actually that you start to get sensation down into the heel and into the foot. Well, that's because you are taxing that musculature, which does not just sit locally in the calf. It actually has this run, right? The body's incredibly connected. If you don't believe me, that's okay. But take my word for it, the body's very well connected. And if you are working on your calf, you will start to feel sensations up and down the leg from there. And those are all the areas in which the calf is in some way connected, whether it crosses over, whether it inserts through and runs to, or perhaps nerves are connected. There are incredible ways that the body is tied together, and this just goes to show that. I can feel my heel and the bottom of my foot right now from hitting the calf. So that is number 1. You're gonna end up hitting that calf, both legs. You should feel, number 1, a lot looser in that ankle when you get done. And that's gonna really help that catch position for you. Next, we're going to stay on the posterior chain or the back side of our body, and we're gonna go to the glutes. Now, the reason that I'm going into the glutes is because this is a large junction of tissue and muscle that inserts into the hip around that glute area. And that includes the whole grouping of gluteus muscles, of which there are many. I'm not gonna go through the actual terms of them. The piriformis is there. There are just a lot of things that bundle together here. So generally you can get quite a bit. I don't know if you've ever had a massage where somebody drops an elbow into your glutes. It's very painful. That's because there's a lot happening there. And again, this being one of the larger muscle drivers for the stroke through the drive, we wanna make sure we address this. So a good place to start here. So you're gonna take that foam roller, you're gonna rock over to one side, left or right, totally up to you. You are then going, oh man, just relaxing, sitting like this is already getting me. Told you I was sore. Now, okay, now what I'm gonna do, to make it better, I'm gonna take this same leg and I'm gonna put my ankle up on the knee. What that does, it's going to draw those muscles tight across my glutes. It's also going to fan them out, so it's gonna give me a little bit more surface area to run that foam roller across the tissues. And I am so happy that I'm doing this for you right now. I'm very happy. You can see this, it's good, it's very good. So I'm just gonna move back and forth, and I'm actually gonna run it all the way up to the crest of my hip, that iliac crest that if you feel in your hips, you'll notice that there's like a bony protuberance up on the back, like this upper ridge of your hips. So I can floss all the way up into these corners, and what I want you to think of is finding the areas where you are most tender. Notice the tone of my voice changes there. Where you're most tender, and you're going to just treat that area with a little extra love. If you want to give it a pause, you can rock back and forth on that point. You can even take that leg out to extension and draw it back in, moving it through range of motion. That often makes it worse, but better in the long run. And that's what we're doing here, making it better in the long run. So that's the glute, and that is how you're actually going to address the glutes, which again, that one's pretty critical. You use the legs a lot. You should be using your posterior chain to help with the stroke. Next up, let's go to quads. The stroke is very quad dominant. Let's just call it at that. So addressing the quads, very important. And this one's actually pretty easy. You're gonna set up foam roller right underneath your quad. And you're just going to run straight up and down from the knee all the way to the hip. Same thing here as we did with the calf, where I'm going to rotate out at 45 degrees and in at 45 degrees. And what this is doing, you actually, this is very logical, you've probably never thought of it, but the quadriceps, 4 muscles, vastus medialis, vastus intermedialis, lateralis, and the rectus femoris. A large group of muscles, outside, inside, center, and then one that runs long outside to inside here. And so what your objective is that when you're going at 45 degrees in, or totally perpendicular, or 45 degrees to the other side, you're essentially isolating one or each of those muscles in those places in an attempt to give it some extra love. And that's why we take all the angles running up and down, is because you don't want to forget one. And especially if you're having some kind of phantom knee pain, then this could be a way that you might miss it if you didn't take all 3 of those angles. So running inside, middle, out is the way you generally want to think, and if you can do that for any body part, you're generally thinking in the right direction. Now from there, a nice thing to do for yourself, now of course all of this is relative. I say a nice thing to do for yourself. Well, you can, in the comments, let me know if it's a nice thing to do for yourself after you've tried it. But you're gonna put it into your quad, and then you're going to, bend and extend your knee, and you can move it in, move it out. And this is a really nice way of similarly to what we were doing with that pull and extend of the toe. This creates that natural inhibition of the muscle's ability to stay flexed and protecting. And so when you extend that knee, typically the quads have to turn off for a moment, and you're going to notice that, other direction, when you pull up with the heel, that hamstring does the work. Therefore, the quads generally have to somewhat turn off in order to allow the knee to flex. And then when you extend the knee, the quads turn back on to extend the knee. And so again, this is how the body's actually pretty fascinating when you speak to or think of anatomy. Parts of the body serve dual purposes. In one sense, they are the movement, and in the other, they simply support the opposite of that movement. Natural inhibition. Pretty interesting stuff. So that's how you're going to approach the quads. Next up, we're going to get into a bit of the obliques and the core that you want to be thinking about. So you'll take your foam roller, you're gonna place it down, and remember that iliac crest that I talked about, that upper crest of your hips that, again, if you put your hands down here, you can feel that bony protuberance. Am I saying that right? Bony protuberance. And you're gonna find that, and then what you're gonna do is take that foam roller and put it right above. And you're gonna work flossing in and out on that spot. Just being gentle here. I'm not looking for like a whole lot of aggressive movement. And what helps is if you're taking some big, deep, calming breaths in this space to allow the muscles and the tissues that normally support the body there to relax and allow the foam roller to work in. Now from here, you'll also notice you can naturally move over to the erectors on your back, the muscles that support the spine vertically. And generally, like if you see somebody with their shirt off, right, it's like the pillars that run on either side of the spine, those would be your erectors. So you can also run there and start to give yourself that vertical treatment and a little bit of that 45 degrees off angle. That's gonna help you, again, tackle different areas. These are a lot of small muscles that are here. Be gentle with them, but they also need some love because they do a lot of work in supporting you vertically in the entire stroke, really. As you're swinging through the hips, the erectors should be doing quite a bit of work. And often I speak to the erectors as something that are very responsible for that positional endurance, as I like to call it. Positional endurance, meaning your body's ability to maintain the right positions for a prolonged period of time. Early on when you're rowing, it can be tough to maintain the right positions for 10,000 meters because your body just isn't used to engaging that muscle for that long of a period of time. The more you practice, the easier those positions get. That's because positional endurance improves. Now, that tackles the back and the core. You maybe could hit abs, but I really wouldn't see the ability to do anything super positive with a foam roll in that. And then I'll give you one extra. This is starting to get into the upper body, but let's give you this one extra, and that's the lats. Because the lats do a healthy amount of grabbing, okay? The lats and the T-spine do a healthy amount of grabbing of the tension in the stroke. So what I'm gonna have you do here is set up that big meaty stuff. That's your lats. If you feel and grab that large, it kind of feels like a large a ribeye, maybe a flank steak, something like that. You feel it in between your fingers. Then you're gonna sit there, take that arm out overhead, and you're going to move back and forth again, inside, out, trying to find all planes of movement to move through. Oh, that's so good. To move through and find the tissues, right behind the shoulder maybe. Give yourself some flexion and extension. Hey, that feels so good. Oh, internal, external rotation. All we're doing is trying to search out the stuff that happens in the areas that might be tender on your body. So, tackle those. You can do all that in about 5 minutes. If you want to hit them quickly, give maybe a minute to each position, maybe 10 minutes. But if you address those either before or after the workouts, it's totally up to you on timing. Some people prefer before, some after. I'm not going to get into the semantics of which is better and why. I personally think as long as you're doing the work, you're in a positive position and you should be doing that for yourself. So who am I to say whether before or after is right for you, as long as you're doing it. That's the important part. If you enjoyed this one and you want more of it, watch this video where I give you 10 minutes of really good lower body stretching to help mobilize your legs for rowing. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so that you get notified when we come out with new videos. Right there. Oh.